Go ahead. Make my day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. My name's Robert Whitelaw. I am the Rebel Broker, licensed real estate broker in the state of California, member of the National Association of Realtors. But please, don't hold that against me. Welcome to it, folks. I hope you're all very jazzed for the upcoming weekend. I have a busy schedule ahead of me. Lots to do. Maybe even a few things we'll talk about here on the show down the road a bit. In the meantime, we've got some interesting topics to cover. We are reviewing an interesting article that was put out on the BiggerPockets website, as you all know, or maybe you don't. Maybe you're new and it's been a long time since I've mentioned it. You haven't caught it. I'm a member of BiggerPockets. I think it's probably one of the better sites out there for real estate folks. In terms of the seminars they do, the articles they publish, it is a great source of information. I know I tweet a lot of their stuff on a pretty regular basis. And from time to time, we will cover what they have to offer. And their forums are great too. You will, and I've had some people join BiggerPockets to get access to the forums, and they'll complain that there's just so many pretenders out there. There's not a lot of actual real stuff happening there. Well, you know what? You're going to get a certain percentage of that everywhere. I have yet to encounter a online forum aimed at real estate folks that doesn't have some percentage of folks who are really, and this isn't necessarily a negative thing, because this is going to be true everywhere, right? Whether you go to a bar and you get into a conversation about something, there's always going to be somebody who knows more than everybody else who's actually never done it. That's going to be true everywhere. So, but in terms of that being a big problem or the predominant folks, I don't see that as much on BiggerPockets. I tend to interact with folks who tend to be pretty real once you get right down to it. So I strongly suggest that you check them out. Now, they had an article that I thought was super interesting. This is a topic we've talked about before, but there was some data here that kind of informed this one that I thought was worth sharing. So if you'd like to check it out for yourself, you can head on over to biggerpockets.com. The name of the article is "This Massive Demographic Will Become Hungry for Rentals Within 5 Years." So if you're looking for windows to serve certain groups of folks out there in the renters market, or you're looking to increase the desirability of your rental properties for certain markets, this is going to be a great show for you, because here's what's also awesome. By doing what we're going to suggest here, you are not excluding any other demographic. You're going to be just as attractive to every other demographic, but by making some of the changes we're going to talk about here, you're going to ramp up your desirability with a specific demographic, and one that I think is very lucrative for landlords. I know that when I talk to folks who rent, they seem to have the least amount of trouble with folks in this particular demographic. So we're going to go ahead and jump in and chat about that. Before we do, let's go ahead and run through it real quick. How do you get in contact with the Rebel Broker? Well, the best way is through the website. Head on over to therebelbroker.com. Click on the contacts button in the menu bar, and from there, it's all pretty easy. We've all done it before. Use that tool to send along any ideas, suggestions, observations, or questions that you might have. Happy to have an exchange with you. I didn't get any feedback from folks relating to yesterday's show. Would you like to see a more in-depth look into the specific markets of some of the cities that we talked about yesterday? If you'll remember, we talked about undervalued communities yesterday. What's interesting is I got some folks contacting me, but maybe I'm a day behind, or they are, because it was actually more about stuff prior to that show. But so maybe today will be the day that I hear more from folks. But if that's something that sounds good to you, let me know. In my head, what I'm thinking is it might make more sense to do that kind of show on YouTube, because it's a little bit more visual. I can show you how I'm researching from my desk to doing that. So maybe that's what I'll do. I'll give it a little bit more thought, but I'd love to get some feedback from you. And the best way to submit that is through the website, therebelbroker.com. So head on over there to give me some feedback. And of course, from the website, you can also join the Rebel Underground, which I have high hopes for in terms of giving you guys additional content once in a while. For those of you who are currently members of the Rebel Underground, you can attest to anyone who might sign up that I do not pester you. I can't even remember the last time I sent out a note to the whole group, but when I do, that'll be the folks that I send it to. Okay. Now, this article, the context of this article is from someone who is a multifamily person. They're a multifamily buy and hold investor. And here's the thing. The conventional wisdom right now is that we all need to be really ready for millennials. And while that's not necessarily untrue, I think that there is a far more lucrative argument to be made for folks in the baby boomer community. And why do I say that? Well, because there's still plenty of data that shows that millennials are kind of holding back. Now, granted, the thing they're tending to hold back for is purchasing, which would be more interesting to folks who are flippers and may still represent great opportunities for folks who are trying to rent. But what's great about what I'm going to suggest here, what we're going to talk about from this article, doesn't exclude that. Your place is going to be every bit as attractive to a millennial with what we're going to talk about, but simply make it more attractive to baby boomers. And baby boomers tend to put less wear and tear on your property. They're not throwing keggers. They're tending to relax. These are folks who are tending to live at a different pace that makes them great renters. And I in the past have had rentals where I've had folks from different demographics, and I've never had any trouble with folks that were kind of in that baby boomer or over 55 to 60 demographic. It's a great demographic to serve, and they have special needs. So there are things to think about. Now, multifamily is difficult unless you're talking about duplexes or quads, because one of the first things, and we haven't even gotten into the article yet. This is just me sort of opining here on this. But there are things that are structurally related to the property that you need to be aware of ahead of time for maximum desirability for this age group. And the first one is no stairs. If you've got a lot of stairs just to get to the front door, you don't want to do what we're going to suggest. If you have a lot of stairs inside the house, you don't want to do what we're going to suggest. Folks in this age group, and here's one reason why we're talking about rentals. You may say, well, Robert, why would you want to cater to folks who already own a house? Well, because of the numbers we're going to talk about here in a minute, there are going to be an awful lot of folks at this point in their lives when the kids are out of the house, they're no longer in need of that home, even if it's reasonably sized for where they live, that are going to be motivated to sell it and then to rent, to pull out their equity from the home and make it part of how they're living rather than hold on to that property. So we're going to go ahead and talk about that. Just to sort of hit the first intro from this article, according to this author, quote, they don't want or can't afford to buy their home or keep the home they hold. And as rental owners, we should be targeting the demographic and appealing to their preferences. And this may be true, but behind all this hype of the millennial generation creeps this massive wave of rental demand from what has been the largest demographic for the past 50 years. Now, one interesting thing from this article, if you want to check it out, is a breakdown of the population in millions of folks in different age groups. And I'll tell you, if you just start looking at the 55 and older generation, it is a huge chunk. The 55 to 59 is only outnumbered a very little bit by 20 to 29-year-olds. And statistically, we find those folks tend to be renters, but those numbers here are so close that you are not limiting the number of folks you're going to appeal to in terms of the marketplace. And again, as I mentioned, you're not excluding anyone with these things we're going to suggest. You're simply increasing the desirability of your place for one specific group. All right, so let's start off with what we know. According to the Census Bureau, these are folks who were born from 1946 to 1964. So this is folks in age 53 and 71 in terms of 2017. Over 76 million babies were born in the United States during that time, and factoring in immigration, the current estimate of the baby boomer demographic is close to 80 million folks. Now, the median age of baby boomers is 62 years old in 2017. in the United States. 62 years old is the first year individuals can retire and begin to receive Social Security benefits. But what's super interesting is data that tells us how quickly this segment of the market is going to be growing. According to the data here, 12,000 boomers will be retiring every day for the next next several years. That's a big number. Some of that figure will not retire and some will pass. But the point is not to be exact, but rather to show that there is going to be a massive wave of retirees coming up in the next 1 to 5 years. Now, only a small percentage are actually financially ready to retire. And as they get further on into the 60s, the impetus to retire gets stronger. But according to the study, 24% of baby boomers have no retirement savings, the lowest number since the study started in 2011. 55% of baby boomers have some retirement savings, and of those, 42% have less than $100,000. Now, think about that for a second, right? A lot of times when we're talking about these numbers, we sort of template on other people. There may be some of you out there listening who don't have a single dime saved. Maybe you're in your 40s, maybe you're in your 30s, maybe you're even younger. But even for you, the idea of reaching the age of retirement and having no savings or very little doesn't even register for you. Well, so don't think that there are folks out there who have done the logical thing and saved up some money, because there are tons who have not. So we end up with two categories of folks in this age bracket that are potential renters. Folks who have always been renters, never owned a property, but really need to find a place that they can live in affordably that meets their low income status, right? Then we get the other flavor, which are folks who really the only thing they invested in, and there's an awful lot of people in California who've done this, the only thing they really invested in was their home, and they're now going to need to sell it in order to live off of the appreciation that they've enjoyed. So they're going to probably step out, and if they don't downsize and buy another home, which is one category of that I see folks doing, particularly California folks, but it's even more likely that a lot of these folks are going to take that out and simply choose to rent instead of buy. So this is creating in that baby boomer segment of the rental population a big opportunity for folks, landlords meaning. In fact, an interesting number to note here is the percentage of folks at age 50 who are on track with retirement savings is only 22%. The percentage that are behind are 78%. So that represents, I think, a huge opportunity for those of us who are in the real estate investment world to cater to that need, to step up and make offerings that will fit those needs. Half of all retirees are going to be living off of Social Security. How much is the average Social Security payment? And the average payment is approximately $1,317 from data from January of 2017. So let's sort of run down the summary here, and they break it down kind of nicely in this article. So there is a chunk of baby boomers, 80 million of them, that is sort of hitting the top of the wave in 2017. In 2017, it's going to begin peak retirement at a very, very accelerated pace in the tens of thousands per day. But of that group, 74% of them are not financially ready to retire. There's not a hard and fast answer to why they're not ready. The variety of things. All we need to really do is realize we need to contend with the reality of that. Now, as this article also points out, Freddie Mac did a 55-plus survey of housing plans and perceptions to get an idea of what's going to happen to this population of baby boomers as we move forward. All right, so among the 55-plus renters who plan to move again, 71% plan to rent their next home. This may be a rent by choice decision, as 38% say they have enough extra money to go beyond each payday, including for savings. More than half, 59%, think it makes financial sense for people their age to be renters. This view is held by 67% of multifamily renters. So the attractiveness of a rental marketplace is strong with this group. Now, we're going to cover more of what defines this group and what makes it and what will make us a very attractive option to them in just a minute. We're going to take a quick break, so don't go away. We'll be right back to help you define what you need to do to tap into this demographic of the renting population that's growing so hugely over the next few years. So don't go away.
Are you ready to jump in and start your search for your first investment property? Maybe you've decided that it's time to own your own home, or maybe you're ready to sell your home and move on to something new. No matter what your goal is, the Rebel Broker can help. That's right, aside from hosting this show, I am also the owner broker of Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services right here in Silicon Valley. With over 25 years experience serving Silicon Valley, Morgan Hill, San Martin, and Gilroy, I or one of my great agents can help you achieve your goals in real estate. So if you're ready to look into taking that next step towards achieving your real estate goals, point your browser at www.soldbyrobert.com. That's www.soldbyrobert.com and get in touch. Let me show you how I will earn your business and your respect. Again, that's www.soldbyrobert.com, or you can call me at 408-852-0525. California Bureau of Real Estate ID 00984-909.
Welcome back, everyone. We are talking about baby boomers, and they are becoming a lucrative group to cater to. Their size is on par with millennials. And I think it's something that landlords are missing at their peril. If at the very least you want to make your rental more attractive to this group, just to increase the probable pool of interested parties, this is a smart move for us to be aware of this. Now, of course, the things at this point in life, what they're looking for, are going to be pretty logical, right? The very important factors, according to the research from the good folks over at Freddie Mac, is that affordability is one of the top things, 60%. Amenities needed for retirement, 47%. Being in a community where they're no longer responsible for caring for the property, 44%. And being in a walkable community is 43%. So break that down, right? If you are someone who is going to try to cater to this, first, where does your property fit in the affordability spectrum? Where are you in terms of amenities? And we're going to do a lot of referencing that. Amenities for folks that are at that retirement point. And if you have a multifamily unit or a single family unit, what kind of a community surrounds that? And also, are there any issues relating to folks having to care for things in your property? We can talk about that a little bit more too. And also the walkability of the community. In other words, being able to walk to the supermarket, other key things. One other thing I would put that from my experience with folks in this age group is proximity to emergency medical services. A hospital typically is the thing. If they can be more closely related or have very easy access to it, that also tends to be something that is desired. Now, among those who do plan to move, 55 and older renters would like to relocate to a different neighborhood in the same place they are, to the tune of 31% of them, or a different property in the same neighborhood to the tune of 23%, compared to those who would like to move to a different city in the same state, 18%, and then to a different state is 24%. So you don't necessarily need to really focus on what is the population of 55 plus folks in your city. You might want to, given the number of folks who say they'd want to stay in the same city in general, that's a pretty good chunk of folks. But there's also a quarter of them who are talking about moving to another state or another city in the same state, which gets us almost to 50%. So I think no matter where you are, this is a lucrative thing. But if you are doing an honest assessment of where your property is, and that it is absolutely not a retirement community, if the only people who live there tend to be college students, kids who just are at that point in their life, maybe this tactic isn't something you need to worry about. Maybe this strategy doesn't make sense for you. So always be aware of the ground truth surrounding the market your property is located in. Now, what this ends up equaling for you and for the author of this particular article is, for his company, they look to purchase apartment communities with no steps, small unit floor plans, larger property footprints with more landscaping, and nearby grocery stores and medical offices. So that's all true, and that's great. But I think that's a very shortened version of the potential of what you can do here. Now, I've sort of been sprinkling my own thoughts here as we go, but I want to finish off with a couple of more points they make in this article that I think are good to keep in mind. First of all, absolutely keep in mind these senior needs and cater to them if they make sense in your local market. Fill the needs of these folks, but also understand that this is a window of opportunity that probably is going to last from the next 10 to 20 years. But then what happens when that's over, right? And if you're a long-term holder, that's a reasonable thing to think in your head. It could be, and here's the other great thing. When you say 10 to 20 years with this particular demographic, the odds of these folks staying there very long times is exceptionally high. So you're likely going to get someone who's going to be a very good renter, a reliable renter, a regular payer of their rent, put very little mileage on the unit, and likely be there for a super long time. So it could be a dream situation. But in addition to that, you're going to want to be mindful of your marketplace. You're going to want to know, when this baby boomer window closes, am I still in a community that can support, at least today, in the estimate I have today, in my assessment of my marketplace, is there still enough of a core renting population as the millennials move up, as other folks move up behind the millennials to become renters? Is this the kind of community that will support that? Or is it not, right? If it's not, and you think that there could be, when the baby boomer generation kind of moves on, is this town likely to become a ghost town? That's something you're going to want to be aware of as well. There's no doubt we need to watch the millennial generation, but I think that this, and you may end up renting to them, but by providing a property product that also entices folks from the baby boomer generation, you're just making yourself much more marketable. Now, the one final point that this article makes that I think is worth making as well is that one other reason why the baby boomers, I think, can be a more lucrative option for you is because the baby boomer generation is more predictable, right? They're at a stage in their life where anticipating what's likely to happen next is easier. Nobody seems to know what the millennials are going to do. How many years have we been hearing articles about, oh, well, yeah, now the millennials are all coming out to buy or do this or do X or do Y, and it doesn't happen, right? So everyone's trying to explain it. Everyone's trying to figure out why. We've talked about that here on this show before. A lot of the aspects of the marketplace that are holding back millennials continue to exist, and I think it's affordability and a fear. These are folks who, as kids, lived through the downturn. So there's a lot of things at play there. So there's just not as much potential randomness as it relates to the millennial generation. Far more reliable are the baby boomers. So let's talk about it, because this guy comes at it from a multifamily perspective, and that's great. I don't see a problem with that. But you'd have to make sure that from the standpoint of how it's put together, you're catering to that. If you're talking about a multi-unit where you're talking about apartment style living, then you can't have stairs. You can't have the only way to get to that second floor being stairs. You shouldn't have stairs inside the units. You should have everything inside the unit. You don't want the laundry outside. You want to have laundry inside. Now, and some of these things we're going to talk about now would apply to everything. And let me also suggest, if you have a single family residential home, as long as it's ranch style with no stairs, this can work too. Now, is it going to be as lucrative as a multifamily situation? Maybe not. But then again, that depends on who you're renting to overall. If you have, and I'm not suggesting that you should make yourself a 55 only community, a 55 and over only community. I just want you to recognize what the community is where your property is located, because that's obviously going to play in to baby boomer rental decisions as well. Now, so let's talk about the general stuff. One of the things was no labor relating to having to maintain the yard. If you are going to be a landlord and Obviously, the multifamily thing caters to this because anyone who's going to who rent under those circumstances knows they're not going to be responsible for mowing the lawn in the duplex. Well, maybe the duplex they would, but the 5-unit apartment complex or the 10-unit apartment complex, none of those people think they're going to be having to mow the lawn. Single family residential, duplex, quads, anything that tends to look more single family residential that does have yards, they may be concerned about that. So as a landlord, if you provide that service, if you provide landscaping so that all the exterior stuff is maintained, you're satisfying that need for them. Now, again, let's talk about getting into the house and getting around. Mobility is the number one issue with these folks as you get further up in age with baby boomers. So you want as much accessibility as possible. You want no steps. Or if there are steps, you want them to be easily overcome by a ramp or something like that. And again, you need to decide whether or not this makes sense for you. In a lot of cases, it's not going to be an issue, but think through whether or not doing this makes sense. If you want to, I've had folks who did investment properties that really wanted to cater to this, and actually next to the stairs that go up to the front door, which was maybe 3 or 4, they actually created a concrete ramp with a handrail off to the left that just went down the side of the house, the front of the side of the house. It was a relatively inexpensive thing to install, but it looked great, and it also catered to that need, and it also didn't alienate other folks. It was put together nice. It looked good. It was mostly masked by bushes in the front yard, so it wasn't something that caused a problem. So exterior access to the inside of the house should be easy. Now, once you're inside the house, does this property lend itself? Now, we're talking about being desirable for baby boomers, and we're also talking about potentially being desirable even as a single-family residential. I think that this suggestion works just as well for those of you who have a single-family residential home as it does for folks who might have multifamily setups. In the bathroom, you're going to want to have some of the things that you tend to see in senior homes, like the large bars that can bear their weight for them to get in and out of the bathtub. The home should have a bathtub. If you have a property that only has showers, you are not going to be as desirable as a home that has a tub, because seniors tend to like to be able to get into the tub, that the tub is the preferred way to go. Now, there's other things that you can do that are going to make it more desirable for you if it's something that you want to do. And it's going to depend on the community. If you have this thing located in a mostly senior living, you might want to do a few other things. For instance, create a relationship with housekeeping services and let your potential renters know about it. Depending on where they are in age and mobility, they may also want to have housekeeping happen, and you as a landlord can turn them on to various options. Also, are you in an HOA? Are there things within your community that they have access to, like a pool, golf courses, tennis courts, those types of things? And within those communities, are there groups that get together to use those facilities? Those are things that you'd want to be aware of as someone who would be trying to cater to the needs of folks that would be in this particular demographic. Another thing to consider on the interior of your property is how wide are the hallways? How wide are the doors? If someone were using a walker or a wheelchair, would they easily be able to get in and out of all the rooms of the home? These are things that if you take into consideration and think about ahead of time, can really make a potential renter in this demographic feel more comfortable with renting your property. Now, we already talked about grab bars in the bathroom, but another area that is constantly overlooked, I think, by landlords is slippery floors. Now, we all love the hardwood floors. Those are great, right? But oftentimes those are concerns for seniors. So if you've got no skid flooring throughout the house, or you've got some style of flooring that isn't going to allow for folks to slip and fall, you're going to find that that's going to be more desirable. Now, I know that causes a need to make a design decision. I'm kind of more of a hardwood floor guy myself, not a huge fan of the wall-to-wall carpeting, but there are various choices you can make that minimize this. And then if you're like me and you want to just maintain a reasonable flooring that is a carpet that's going to be non-skid, that isn't going to cost you $1 million, a great Berber can take care of that every time. So something to consider in terms of getting your property ready to go for this demographic. Another thing to consider in the bathroom is around the toilet, is there room for a senior safety seat that goes over the toilet, or is it too constricted? And is there just enough room in general to move around in your bathroom? Now, clearly, these are all suggestions that are going to make it more desirable. I know if I was marketing, let's say I was a landlord and I was marketing this property, I would call out these things with little signs. If the unit is vacant and I'm showing it, I'd put a little pop-up sign next to the toilet saying plenty of room for a support toilet around this. And I'm sure you folks have seen what I'm talking about. It's almost like a walker that goes over the toilet just to make accessibility easier. I would put a little label on the grab bar in the bathtub and point out that it exists. Now, some seniors will be okay with a shower, but it needs to be a shower that's designed for seniors. And by that, I mean it's going to have a seat, or it's going to have to be large enough that they could put a shower seat into the shower with them to use there. And when you're doing that, realize this is a group that you need to show them the things that are amenities for them. So for instance, in the shower, have a handheld shower head that has a very easy switch that's located lower for folks to access it, to turn that on so that they can shower that way. These are all things that are going to feed into your property being just that much more desirable to that particular demographic. Now, in other parts of the house, there are things that simply give peace of mind to folks in the baby boomer community. One thing, make sure you have smoke detectors throughout the house that are visible, that you can see, so that we can see that there's absolutely going to be an alert if there's ever a fire or a CO2, whatever might be going on, that puts these folks in a calm frame of mind that if there is an issue, that they're going to get an alert about it. Next, lighting. Exterior to the house, there should be plenty of lighting. Motion detector lighting is excellent. But inside the house, wherever possible, it's good to have as much passive lighting. Now, let me turn you on to something that I found a few years back that I think works great. And what it does is it changes every one of your plugs into ground lighting. So you buy these, you can go to Amazon, you can do a search on them where you can buy a new faceplate for your plugs, and built into the bottom is LED lighting, and it uses two prongs on the inside to tap the power that goes to the plug, but it also has a light sensor. So when it's dark, these lights turn on, and when it's light, they turn off. So in the hallways, anywhere in the house where it makes sense, obviously you don't want to put this behind where a piece of furniture would be, but it simply gives folks that comfort level of knowing that there is additional safety lighting within the property. And finally, if your front door doesn't have a deadbolt, put a deadbolt on it. It's a small investment, but it's one of those things that adds to that feeling of security in your property. Okay, we've covered a pretty good swath of things here. What is the goal? What is the end goal? It's to be a more desirable product for folks in the baby boomer population to address their concerns. Now, if you own a property already, it's already got lots of stairs, it's not located in an area that makes sense. These aren't things you need to necessarily go to the trouble of doing. You need to look at your market. You need to figure out if the things you cannot change about your property lend themselves to being a attractor to folks in the baby boomer population already. If it's even marginal, or you absolutely are in an area where you think that the baby boomer population would be drawn to your property, for the cost of doing these relatively small items, you are going to be drawing in an excellent pool of renters that you're going to kick yourself for missing out on. And you'll be helping folks who are at a stage in their life where they're trying to transition from sort of the workaday world, doing what they were doing there, to being more in a retirement mode. And it can end up being a great relationship between you and your tenant. So I hope this has helped to give you tools to just really embrace that segment of the marketplace. All right, as always, the goal is to leave you with more knowledge on the table than you invested in time. Hope we've done that today. Once again, have a fantastic weekend, and I'll talk to you all next time.